The cafe was busy that afternoon. Sunlight poured through the large windows, casting warm patches of light on the wooden floors. People moved back and forth, chatting quietly, laughing softly, and sipping coffee. There was the familiar hum of espresso machines, the clinking of cups, and the soft rustle of newspapers. Among all this, a woman walked in, carrying a tote bag and balancing her cup of coffee. She looked tired but calm, as if the weight of the day rested gently on her shoulders. She had just come from a long meeting and had taken a few minutes to herself, looking forward to a quiet break before returning to work. She wore a simple blouse, one she had chosen carefully that morning. It was professional and clean, or at least it had been. As she carried her coffee to a small table near the window, she accidentally bumped into her own bag, spilling a little coffee onto the front of her blouse. She froze for a second, staring down at the growing stain. A deep sigh escaped her lips. It was frustrating, yes, but it wasn't the end of the world. She pulled out a napkin from her bag and began dabbing at the stain, hoping to salvage the rest of her lunch break. But just as she bent over, trying to fix the mistake, a man sitting nearby noticed. He was sharply dressed, with a polished appearance and an air of self-importance that seemed to fill the space around him. He leaned back in his chair and watched the woman with a smirk. Then, louder than necessary, he spoke. "Seriously? You can't even handle a coffee cup," he said, his tone dripping with judgment. "Look at that mess. How do you even go out in public like that?" The woman froze. She hadn't expected anyone to comment, let alone mock her so openly. She looked up at him, trying to respond politely. I just spilled a little coffee. It's nothing," she said, her voice calm, though her cheeks burned with embarrassment. But he wasn't done. He leaned forward slightly, pointing toward the stain. "Nothing, that looks ridiculous. You should at least know how to dress properly. People are watching, you know. You really shouldn't let yourself go like this." Other people in the cafe glanced at the exchange, some frowning slightly, others pretending not to notice. A few whispered among themselves, curious about the situation. The woman felt the weight of their eyes on her, but she refused to let him break her composure. She straightened in her chair, holding her head high, and met his gaze. "Accidents happen," she said firmly. "It doesn't make me any less capable or respectable." The man scoffed and shook his head. "Capable? Respectable? You're embarrassed yourself, and honestly, it's hard to respect someone who can't even manage a cup of coffee without ruining their clothes." She took a slow breath. She had faced people like him before, people who felt the need to assert their superiority by belittling others. She had learned long ago that arguing aggressively wouldn't help. Instead, she stayed calm, her voice steady but strong. "I understand you have an opinion, but I don't think it's necessary to shame someone for a small accident. A kind word goes further than ridicule, don't you think?" For a moment, the man didn't know what to say. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not politely. He leaned back, trying to regain his composure, but the woman didn't waver. Her calm demeanor seemed to make him more uncomfortable than her words ever could. Unbeknownst to both of them, someone else in the cafe had been observing the entire exchange. Sitting a few tables away was a man in a suit, quietly drinking his coffee, his attention drawn not to the spilled coffee but to the interaction. He wasn't just any man. He was a powerful CEO, known in the city for his sharp mind and keen sense of people. He had seen plenty of awkward encounters in public, but something about the woman's composure and the man's arrogance caught his eye. The CEO watched quietly, making no move to interrupt. Yet, he wanted to see how the situation would unfold. He noticed the other patrons' reactions. Some were uncomfortable, some embarrassed for the woman, and some clearly enjoying the confrontation. But he paid attention to the woman's body language. Despite the embarrassment of the stain and the man's rude remarks, she remained composed. She didn't lash out, she didn't cry, she didn't shrink away. She handled herself with dignity. The arrogant man, however, seemed oblivious to the CEO's presence. He continued, "Honestly, this is the kind of thing that makes people question your professionalism. If you can't even keep yourself presentable, how can anyone take you seriously?" The woman met his gaze steadily. "I appreciate your concern, but I don't define my worth by how perfect my clothes are. Mistakes happen, and spilling coffee is just that, a small mistake. What matters is how we handle ourselves, not how we look for a few minutes. The man's face flushed with anger and disbelief. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. He opened his mouth to say something else but found himself hesitating. There was something about her tone, the calm confidence in her words that made him pause. He realized, perhaps too late, that the audience was shifting. People weren't laughing with him. They were quietly admiring her restraint. The CEO took a small sip of his coffee, nodding subtly to himself. This was the kind of presence he respected. He saw potential in people not just by their professional achievements, but by how they carried themselves in difficult moments. And right now, this woman was showing a kind of strength and poise that many lacked, especially when faced with unprovoked humiliation. Meanwhile, the woman continued to dab at the stain, keeping her focus on solving the immediate problem rather than escalating the conflict. Her calmness seemed to draw a subtle energy from the room, and the arrogant man, realizing he was losing the audience, started to backtrack. I didn't mean to, it's just... But the woman didn't need him to finish. She had already made her point. It's okay. You don't need to say anything more, she said gently. I'm fine, truly. The man muttered something under his breath, clearly frustrated, and turned away. But the damage to his ego had already been done. The cafe slowly returned to its normal rhythm, though a quiet tension lingered. The woman finished cleaning the coffee, straightened her blouse, and took a deep breath, feeling a small sense of victory. Not over him, but over the moment. Over the embarrassment that could have swallowed her if she had let it. The CEO, still observing, smiled faintly. He made a mental note of her composure, her ability to handle confrontation with grace, and her refusal to let someone else's arrogance dictate her self-worth. He was impressed, not just by her words, but by the way she carried herself. In his experience, that kind of confidence was rare and valuable. As the woman sipped her coffee and began to relax, unaware of the observer's identity, the CEO considered approaching her later. There was something about her presence that suggested intelligence, resilience, and a quiet strength. He could see even from across the room that she wasn't someone to be underestimated. And in the world of business, those qualities were just as important as skill or experience. For now, though, he remained silent, letting the moment settle. The arrogant man had learned, perhaps painfully, that ridicule doesn't always have the power he assumes it does. And the woman, despite a coffee-stained blouse, had emerged with her dignity intact, a quiet reminder that strength isn't always loud. It's in the grace with which you handle life's little spills. The cafe continued to buzz with activity, the sunlight shifting across the room, and life went on. But for a few minutes, a small scene had unfolded that revealed much about character, composure, and the quiet power of a person who refuses to be diminished by another's arrogance. The woman didn't know it yet, but someone influential had taken notice. And sometimes, just sometimes, the universe has a way of rewarding those who carry themselves with dignity, even in the smallest moments. The woman had settled back into her chair, trying to focus on her coffee and the quiet moments before returning to work. But the arrogant man wasn't finished. Even though he had been challenged, his pride wouldn't let him let the matter go so easily. He leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and stared at her as if waiting for her to apologize, to admit she had been wrong. I still don't understand how someone can be so careless, he muttered loud enough for nearby patrons to hear. A small mistake like that makes a big impression. People notice these things. You're in public, for crying out loud. You can't just ignore it. The woman lifted her head and met his gaze calmly. Her expression was firm but polite, like someone who had dealt with people like him countless times before. I understand what you're saying, she replied. But the truth is, small accidents happen to everyone. A coffee spill doesn't define me or my abilities. I'm more concerned about how I respond than how my clothes look for a few minutes. The man blinked, clearly thrown off by her calm response. His smug expression wavered slightly. He wasn't used to people talking back with grace. Most people, he knew, would have apologized nervously or scurried away, embarrassed and quiet. But here she was, standing firm, not literally, but with the kind of confidence that could stop a room from judging her. A few people nearby whispered to each other. Some murmured words of encouragement, while others just observed silently, fascinated by the unfolding scene. The cafe, once a simple lunchtime spot, had turned into a stage for an unexpected confrontation. And yet, the woman remained composed, dabbing at the coffee stain now more out of habit than necessity. The CEO, still sitting a few tables away, continued to watch. He wasn't just impressed, he was intrigued. There was something about her that drew attention naturally. It wasn't about beauty or appearance, it was about the way she carried herself, the way she refused to be shaken by someone else's arrogance. In his world, that kind of strength mattered more than a fancy degree or a big title. The arrogant man, growing more frustrated, decided to escalate his comments. You think that's enough? A little excuse about accidents? People judge you by what they see. You might be a great person, but right now you look careless and unprofessional. Can't you even manage a single cup of coffee? The woman shook her head slightly, smiling faintly but firmly. I manage my responsibilities every day. One coffee spill doesn't erase all of that. I don't expect everyone to understand, but I also don't need to shrink or feel ashamed over something so minor. The man's face turned red, and he opened his mouth, clearly trying to find words sharp enough to wound her confidence. But before he could say anything more, the CEO quietly set down his coffee and got up. He walked over, moving with calm authority. His presence alone was enough to draw attention from the other patrons. "Excuse me?" he said, his voice calm, but firm. "I couldn't help overhearing. You seem to think it's acceptable to publicly shame someone over a small mistake." The man's jaw tightened. You were just humiliating someone unnecessarily," the CEO interrupted. "Do you really think that makes you look powerful or impressive? It only makes you look small." A hush fell over the cafe. Patrons turned their heads, watching the exchange. The arrogant man realized he had underestimated the CEO, someone whose reputation alone commanded respect. He stammered, trying to respond, but the words didn't come. The woman, meanwhile, sat quietly. She didn't need to add anything. The CEO's words were enough. He looked at her briefly, then back at the man. "And you," he said, pointing gently, "might want to consider that kindness and respect will get you much further than arrogance and criticism." The man turned away, embarrassed and unsure of how to recover. His smug confidence had been replaced by frustration and humiliation, and the cafe's quiet hum now seemed louder, like a reminder of his failed attempt to dominate the situation. The CEO then turned to the woman, smiling slightly. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that," he said. "It's never easy when someone tries to belittle you, especially in public. But I have to say, you handled it remarkably well. Calm, composed, and confident. Exactly the qualities I look for in people I work with." The woman blinked in surprise, unsure how to respond. Compliments like this weren't something she expected from strangers, especially not in the middle of a confrontation. "Thank you," she said softly. "I just try to stay true to myself." The CEO nodded approvingly. "And that's exactly why people notice you, even when they don't realize it. Strength and composure speak louder than words. You've demonstrated that today." The woman felt a small sense of validation wash over her. She had already managed to navigate the uncomfortable encounter with the arrogant man, but hearing someone influential recognize her composure added an unexpected layer of confidence. The man, still fuming but now silent, finally moved to another table. His presence diminished. The cafe slowly returned to its normal rhythm, though a subtle energy lingered in the air. People who had witnessed the scene whispered quietly, admiring how the woman had handled herself and how the CEO had intervened without making it awkward or dramatic. The CEO gestured toward the woman's table. "Would you mind if I join you for a moment? I'd like to talk more if that's okay." She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Sure," she said. Her curiosity was piqued. This was unexpected. She hadn't come to the cafe looking for attention or opportunities. She had simply wanted a quiet break. But now, fate had other plans. As the CEO sat down, he leaned forward slightly, speaking in a tone that was calm, friendly, and respectful. "I couldn't help noticing the way you handled that situation," he said. "It's rare to see someone maintain such composure when faced with unnecessary criticism. Most people would either apologize excessively or get defensive. You didn't do either." The woman smiled faintly. "I've learned that reacting angrily doesn't solve anything. People who belittle others usually don't listen anyway. Staying calm allows you to maintain control, not just over the situation, but over yourself." The CEO nodded, clearly impressed. "Exactly. And that kind of mindset is invaluable, especially in high-pressure environments. You clearly have the ability to handle challenges without losing your focus or integrity. That's rare and worth recognizing." They talked quietly for a few minutes, the conversation flowing naturally. The woman felt an unusual sense of ease, as if the tension from the earlier encounter had melted away. The CEO asked about her work, her experience, and her perspective on leadership and handling difficult situations. She answered honestly, sharing insights from her professional life without exaggeration or pretense. He listened intently, nodding occasionally, clearly taking note of her intelligence, poise, and perspective. "You have a remarkable way of thinking," he said. "It's not just about handling a coffee spill. It's about how you navigate life's challenges. People underestimate how important that is." The woman realized that this chance encounter, which had started with embarrassment and tension, was turning into something entirely unexpected. She hadn't sought recognition, but it was being offered in a genuine, respectful way. It was a reminder that sometimes, how you respond to challenges matters more than avoiding them altogether. Meanwhile, the arrogant man watched from a distance, realizing that his attempt to humiliate her had not only failed, but had backfired spectacularly. He had underestimated her composure and had inadvertently drawn the attention of someone powerful and influential. The irony was not lost on him, and though he tried to mask it, the embarrassment was evident on his face. As the conversation continued, the woman felt a growing sense of possibility. The CEO wasn't just praising her, he was opening a door. She hadn't expected anything to come from this encounter, but it was a reminder that opportunities often arrive in the most unexpected ways. By the time they finished their coffee, the woman felt lighter, not just because the moment of embarrassment had passed, but because she had been seen and appreciated for who she was, not just what she wore or how she appeared in a single moment. The CEO smiled warmly as he stood to leave. "Thank you for taking the time to talk with me. I'll be in touch. I think there's potential for us to work together on something meaningful." The woman nodded, a quiet sense of anticipation building inside her. She had handled an uncomfortable situation with grace, maintained her dignity, and now, unexpectedly, had opened the door to a new opportunity. As the cafe returned to its normal rhythm, she realized that life had a way of rewarding strength, calmness, and integrity, often when you least expect it. And sometimes a small coffee spill was just the beginning of a much bigger story. The cafe slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but the tension from earlier lingered in the air like an invisible thread. The woman finished her coffee, her hands wrapped around the warm cup, feeling a mix of relief and pride. She had handled a difficult encounter without losing her composure, but she couldn't help thinking about the arrogant man and the sharp words he had thrown her way. It was frustrating that someone could be so harsh over something as small as a coffee stain, yet she refused to let it ruin her day. As she prepared to leave, she noticed the CEO standing near the entrance, checking his phone. He looked up, saw her, and smiled, motioning for her to wait. Curiosity sparked within her. She hadn't expected anything more to come from the encounter, but here he was, clearly wanting to speak with her again. "Thank you for waiting," he said as she approached. "I know this might seem sudden, but I'd like to discuss something important with you. May I invite you to sit for a few minutes?" The woman hesitated briefly. She wasn't sure what to expect, but something in his tone felt genuine. She nodded, and they found a quiet corner in the cafe. The noise of the other patrons faded into the background as they settled in, creating a space for a meaningful conversation. "I want to be upfront," the CEO began. "What happened earlier was completely inappropriate, and I was impressed by the way you handled it. People often react impulsively, letting anger or embarrassment dictate their responses. You didn't. You remained calm, confident, and respectful. That takes a rare kind of strength." The woman felt a warmth spread through her chest. Compliments like this were not new, but coming from someone so influential, it carried weight. She smiled politely. "Thank you. I've learned over time that reacting with patience and understanding is far more effective than reacting out of frustration. It doesn't always come naturally, but I try." He nodded. "It shows. And that's exactly the quality I was hoping to find. I lead a large team, and we often deal with high-pressure situations where composure makes all the difference. I think you have the kind of mindset that could make a real impact." The woman's curiosity deepened. She had come to the cafe expecting nothing more than a quiet break, and now she was in a conversation that felt unexpectedly important. "I appreciate that," she said softly. "I do my best to handle challenges as they come. It's not about perfection. It's about resilience and focus." The CEO leaned in slightly as if emphasizing his next words. "Exactly. And that's why I want to talk to you about a potential opportunity. I have a project coming up that requires someone who can manage pressure, navigate complex situations, and maintain professionalism no matter what. Your approach today tells me you might be exactly the person we need." The woman's eyes widened slightly. This was far beyond what she had expected. She had never sought attention or validation, yet here it was, delivered not with flattery, but with genuine recognition of her qualities. She took a deep breath, trying to process the unexpected turn her day had taken. I'm honored that you think of me in that way. Could you tell me more about the project?" The CEO smiled, appreciating her composure even as her curiosity and slight hesitation were evident. "It's a large-scale initiative that will require leadership, strategic thinking, and the ability to manage multiple moving parts. But more than technical skills, it requires someone who can remain grounded and confident in the face of challenges. Someone who can inspire others through their actions rather than just words. Today, I saw a glimpse of that in you." The woman listened intently, intrigued by the idea of a project that valued character and composure as much as skill. "It sounds challenging," she said, her voice steady but engaged. "I like challenges. They bring out the best in people if handled correctly." He nodded approvingly. "Exactly. And I think this could be a chance for you to shine, but I also want to be honest, it's not going to be easy. There will be criticism, unexpected setbacks, and people who may try to undermine your confidence. What matters is not avoiding these situations, but how you respond. And from what I saw, today I believe you can handle it." The woman felt a spark of excitement mixed with a touch of nervousness. Opportunities like this didn't come often, and certainly not in the middle of a normal day at a cafe. She shifted slightly, considering how to respond. "I'm interested," she said finally. "I like the idea of a challenge, and I appreciate your confidence in me. I would like to learn more and see how I can contribute." The CEO smiled warmly. "I'm glad to hear that. Let's schedule a proper meeting where we can discuss the project in detail. Today was just the beginning. I think you have potential, and I want to ensure it's nurtured and recognized." As they stood up to leave, the woman felt a sense of anticipation building. She had handled an embarrassing and difficult moment with composure, and it had led to an unexpected opportunity. Life had a way of rewarding strength, even when it came in small, unplanned ways. Meanwhile, the arrogant man had been observing, from a distance. He had moved to a different table after the CEO's intervention, but he couldn't ignore what had just happened. His attempt to humiliate the woman had backfired completely. Not only had she remained composed, but someone powerful had also noticed her strength and poise. He could feel a mix of embarrassment and frustration building inside him. His arrogance, once a shield, now seemed to have made him appear small and petty. The cafe continued to buzz with normal activity. But the scene had changed subtly. People who had witnessed the earlier confrontation whispered quietly among themselves, admiring the woman's grace and the CEO's tact. It was a quiet reminder that character mattered more than appearances, and dignity often commanded more respect than arrogance. As the woman left the cafe, she felt a renewed sense of confidence. Today had started with a small mishap, a spilled coffee that could have ruined her day. Instead, it had become a turning point. She had proven her resilience, maintained her dignity, and even opened a door to an unexpected opportunity. The world had a way of testing people in small ways, she realized, and sometimes the smallest tests revealed the greatest strengths. Walking down the busy streets, she reflected on the encounter. The arrogant man had tried to shame her, but his words had no lasting effect. The CEO had seen beyond the coffee stain to her true qualities: calmness, confidence, and the ability to handle pressure without losing integrity. She realized that moments like this didn't just test character. They revealed it. Meanwhile, the CEO returned to his office, his mind replaying the events in the cafe. He had seen countless interactions in his career, but today's encounter had stood out. The woman's ability to maintain composure, articulate her thoughts, and respond with calm confidence had left a strong impression. He made a note to follow up with her formally to discuss the project and potentially bring her on board. In his experience, recognizing talent when it appeared, even in unexpected moments, was often the difference between success and missed opportunity. Back in the cafe, the arrogant man sat in silence, replaying the scene in his mind. He had underestimated the woman, underestimated the power of dignity, and underestimated the presence of someone influential who had witnessed the encounter. The embarrassment was sharp, and he realized that arrogance and judgment rarely produce the outcomes one hopes for. In that moment, he became an example of how pride and condescension often backfire. As the woman returned to her regular routine, she carried with her a quiet sense of empowerment. She had turned an embarrassing situation into a moment of strength, gaining recognition from someone who truly mattered. She understood more clearly than ever that life often presented challenges not to shame or punish, but to reveal inner strength and open doors to new opportunities. The day continued, busy and bustling as always, but for the woman it had been transformative. A small coffee stain, an arrogant remark, and a chance encounter had combined to create a moment that would change her professional path. And as she reflected on it, she realized that true power wasn't in how loudly one spoke or how sharply one judged, but in how gracefully one responded to life's unexpected moments. By the end of the day, she felt a sense of calm and determination. She had been tested and she had risen to the occasion. Opportunities often arrived when least expected, and the way she handled herself today would ripple into the future in ways she could not yet imagine. The CEO had noticed her, yes, but, more importantly, she had proven to herself that her dignity, poise, and resilience were her greatest strengths. Even as the city moved on around her, she walked with quiet confidence, knowing that life had a way of rewarding those who met challenges with grace. The arrogant man's words faded into the background, irrelevant and powerless against the quiet strength she had displayed. And the possibility of what lay ahead, an opportunity to grow, to lead, and to make an impact, sparked a sense of excitement that she had not felt in a long time. The following morning, the woman arrived at her office feeling a mix of anticipation and calm determination. The previous day's events were still fresh in her mind, and she couldn't help replaying the scene at the cafe. A small coffee stain had unexpectedly become a turning point in her life. She had handled the arrogant man with dignity, and someone powerful had noticed. It was still hard to believe that a chance encounter could lead to such an opportunity. Her phone buzzed quietly on her desk. She glanced at it and saw an email from the CEO she had met yesterday. Her heart skipped a beat. She opened it carefully, reading each line. The tone was professional yet warm, and it clearly outlined an invitation to a formal meeting to discuss the project in detail. The words confirmed what she had hoped. He had been genuinely impressed, and he wanted her to be involved in something significant. She sat back for a moment, letting the reality sink in. She had always believed that hard work and integrity mattered, but it was rare for someone influential to notice and acknowledge it. Today, that acknowledgement was tangible. She felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was not just about a job. It was about being recognized for her character, her poise, and her ability to handle pressure. Later that afternoon, she arrived at the CEO's office. The building was sleek and modern, with glass walls and clean lines that reflected the bustling energy of the city outside. She was guided to a conference room where the CEO was waiting, along with a small team of senior colleagues. They greeted her warmly, and the atmosphere was professional but inviting. The CEO began the meeting by revisiting the events at the cafe, explaining how he had been impressed by her composure under pressure. "I know this might sound unusual," he said, "but observing how you handled a simple yet awkward situation gave me insight into your character. It's one thing to handle stress when everything is going perfectly. It's another to maintain dignity when faced with unnecessary criticism. That's what stood out to me." The woman nodded, smiling slightly. She didn't need to elaborate. She had already shown who she was, and now she appreciated the acknowledgement. The CEO continued, "We have a project that will challenge even experienced professionals. It involves coordinating multiple teams, managing tight deadlines, and navigating high-pressure situations with a level of professionalism that inspires confidence. I believe you have the qualities necessary to succeed in this environment." The woman felt a mixture of excitement and responsibility. The project sounded demanding, but it also sounded like an opportunity to prove herself in a way she hadn't yet experienced. "I appreciate your confidence in me," she said. "I'm willing to take on the challenge and contribute however I can." The CEO smiled, clearly pleased. "Excellent. Let's go over the specifics. The project involves launching a new initiative across several departments. You'll be responsible for ensuring seamless communication, problem-solving on the fly, and maintaining team morale under pressure. It won't be easy, but I have faith in your abilities." As they discussed the project in detail, the woman felt her confidence grow. She asked questions, shared ideas, and offered suggestions based on her previous experience. The CEO and his team listened intently, nodding and taking notes. It became clear that this wasn't just an evaluation, it was a collaboration. They respected her insights and were genuinely interested in her perspective. Meanwhile, the arrogant man still working in the same industry had heard rumors of the encounter at the cafe. Colleagues whispered about how a powerful CEO had taken notice of the woman he had tried to humiliate. Though he had tried to brush it off initially, the story gnawed at him. His confidence, once unshakable, now felt fragile. He realized that his arrogance had cost him credibility in front of others, and he began to feel the weight of public judgment, however subtle it was. Back at the CEO's office, the woman continued to engage with the team. She realized that her ability to remain calm, focused, and respectful had not only impressed the CEO but had also given her credibility with his colleagues. They were interested in her input because they could see that she approached challenges with thoughtfulness rather than emotion. Her composure had become her strength, turning a small personal mishap into a professional advantage. After the meeting, the CEO spoke privately with her. "I want to make it clear," he said, "that this opportunity isn't about yesterday's incident alone. It's about your overall demeanor, your ability to handle stress, and the way you interact with people, even in difficult situations. That's why I think you're perfect for this role." The woman felt a surge of gratitude. This was more than just a job offer. It was recognition of her character, of the choices she made when faced with challenges. She knew that her response to the arrogant man had been the catalyst, but it was her consistent composure and professionalism that had truly made an impression. As the day progressed, she began preparing for the project. She reviewed materials, brainstormed strategies, and considered ways to communicate effectively with multiple teams. She understood that success would require both skill and emotional intelligence, qualities she had honed over time. Her mind was focused, and she felt a sense of determination she hadn't experienced before. Meanwhile, the arrogant man's frustration grew. He had watched as the woman, whom he had tried to shame, gained recognition and opportunity. The irony was not lost on him. His attempts to belittle her had not only failed, but had actually elevated her in ways he could not counteract. He began to realize that arrogance and condescension rarely lead to success, while dignity and composure often open doors that arrogance cannot. The woman, unaware of the man's continued humiliation, focused entirely on the task at hand. She reached out to the team she would be coordinating, introducing herself with confidence and professionalism. Her approach was clear and approachable, balancing authority with respect. People responded positively, drawn to her calm, yet determined, energy. Over the next few days, she became deeply involved in the project. Meetings, planning sessions, and collaborative brainstorming filled her schedule. She faced unexpected challenges, miscommunications, tight deadlines, and conflicting priorities. But she handled each obstacle with the same calmness she had shown in the cafe. Her ability to stay composed under pressure allowed her to navigate problems efficiently, earning respect and trust from everyone involved. The CEO, observing her progress, was pleased. He had not only recognized her potential but was seeing it come to life. Her composure had proven invaluable, and her insights were shaping the project's direction in meaningful ways. He made a mental note that the woman had a rare combination of intelligence, emotional resilience, and professionalism, qualities that would serve any organization well. Meanwhile, whispers about the woman's success began circulating. Colleagues admired her ability to rise above negativity and focus on meaningful work. The arrogant man, now aware of the growing recognition she had received, felt increasingly isolated. He realized that his attempt to humiliate her had only highlighted his own weaknesses, while her strengths had become more visible to everyone around them. The woman, focused entirely on her responsibilities, didn't let gossip distract her. She remained grounded, aware that true success wasn't about defeating someone else. It was about doing her best, remaining professional, and staying true to her values. Her calm approach continued to impress the team and the CEO, reinforcing the idea that character mattered as much as skill. By the end of the first week on the project, progress was evident. Teams were communicating more effectively, deadlines were being met, and morale had improved. The CEO expressed his satisfaction privately, acknowledging her contributions and the positive impact she had already made. The woman felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. She had turned an embarrassing incident into a stepping stone for professional growth, and she was only at the beginning of the journey. The arrogant man, meanwhile, struggled with his own professional reputation. His attempts to assert dominance through criticism had backfired, and he realized that respect could not be demanded. It had to be earned. Watching the woman succeed, he felt a mix of frustration and admiration, though he would never admit it aloud. The woman, however, was focused on the future. She had proven to herself and others that composure, confidence, and resilience were powerful tools. Opportunities often came from unexpected places, and her ability to handle challenges with grace had opened doors she hadn't anticipated. She understood that success was not about perfection. It was about how one responded to obstacles, how one treated others, and how one carried oneself in difficult moments. As the week drew to a close, she felt a sense of clarity and purpose. The project was just beginning, but she knew that her approach, calm, thoughtful, and professional, would guide her through the challenges ahead. She had turned a small coffee spill into an opportunity that could shape her career, and she felt ready to embrace it fully. The CEO, observing from a distance, smiled to himself. He had recognized talent when it appeared, and he had seen how the woman's dignity and poise had transformed a potentially negative situation into a remarkable demonstration of strength. He knew she would continue to excel, and he felt confident that her impact would extend far beyond the initial project. For the woman, the journey was just beginning. The weeks that followed were some of the busiest and most rewarding of the woman's life. The project she had been invited to join quickly became the center of her professional focus. She immersed herself in planning, organizing, and problem-solving, coordinating with multiple teams and ensuring that communication flowed smoothly. What had started as a simple act of composure in a cafe, the way she handled the arrogant man, had now opened a door to a new chapter in her career. Every morning she arrived at the office with a quiet determination. She reviewed emails, checked project updates, and made sure she was prepared for any unexpected challenges. The team she worked with respected her because she listened, offered thoughtful guidance, and treated everyone with fairness. She had learned over time that respect was earned, not demanded, and she demonstrated that consistently. The CEO continued to observe her progress closely. He saw her calmly navigate tense meetings, resolve conflicts without drama, and inspire confidence among the team members. He had recognized her potential in the cafe, and now he was witnessing it in action. Her ability to handle high-pressure situations with grace and intelligence confirmed his initial impression. She was exceptional. Meanwhile, the arrogant man, still lingering in the same industry, began to hear whispers about the woman's accomplishments. Colleagues mentioned her name with admiration, discussing the way she had contributed to the project and the impact she had made in a short time. He realized with growing frustration that his earlier attempts to humiliate her had backfired spectacularly. Instead of diminishing her, his actions had highlighted her strength, resilience, and professionalism. The woman, however, was unaware of the gossip. She focused entirely on her work, determined to meet every challenge with integrity and efficiency. She knew that true success wasn't about proving someone wrong. It was about doing her best, maintaining her values, and making a meaningful impact. Her consistent approach earned her not only respect from colleagues, but also genuine admiration from the CEO. As the project progressed, she encountered several difficult situations. Deadlines were tight, unexpected obstacles arose, and certain team members occasionally clashed over priorities. But she approached each problem methodically, listening carefully, understanding the perspectives of others, and finding solutions that were fair and practical. Her calm presence had a stabilizing effect, helping the team remain focused even under pressure. The CEO often checked in, offering guidance but allowing her the space to lead and make decisions. He appreciated that she took responsibility without becoming defensive, that she communicated clearly without arrogance, and that she inspired collaboration rather than conflict. It was a rare combination of skills and character, and he knew it would make a lasting difference in the outcome of the project. Meanwhile, the arrogant man's frustration grew. He had once assumed that criticizing others would give him an advantage or elevate his own standing. But he now watched, helpless as someone he had tried to belittle thrived and gained recognition. His colleagues began to see him in a different light, not as a strong or authoritative figure, but as someone who relied on judgment and condescension rather than skill and integrity. The contrast between his behavior and the woman's success was striking, and it only deepened his humiliation. The woman, completely focused on her goals, remained unaware of the impact her actions were having on him. She knew that true power lay in composure, persistence, and integrity. She continued to give her best, encourage her team, and solve problems effectively. With each passing day, her reputation grew. People admired her not just for her work, but for the way she handled herself in every situation, especially under pressure. One afternoon, as the project neared a major milestone, the CEO called her into his office. He wanted to recognize her contributions formally. "I've watched the way you've handled this project," he said, "and I'm genuinely impressed. You've faced challenges, tight deadlines, and unexpected obstacles, yet you've maintained your composure and guided your team to success. That's remarkable." The woman smiled, feeling a quiet sense of satisfaction. "Thank you," she said. "I've just tried to stay focused and do my best. The team has been wonderful to work with, and their support has made all the difference." The CEO leaned back, nodding. "That's true, but your leadership has been the guiding force. What stands out most is not just your skill, but your ability to inspire confidence and maintain professionalism in every situation. That quality is rare and invaluable." He then shared something that made her heart lift. The company had decided to highlight her contributions in an internal report, showcasing her as a model of leadership and composure. Her success story would serve as an example for others, reinforcing the importance of integrity, resilience, and calm under pressure. Meanwhile, the arrogant man had heard about this recognition. He felt a mix of embarrassment, frustration, and helplessness. The very qualities he had ridiculed, composure, professionalism, and resilience, were now being celebrated and rewarded. His attempts to belittle her had inadvertently elevated her in ways he could never have imagined. He realized that arrogance might provide temporary satisfaction, but it rarely leads to true success or respect. The woman, fully absorbed in her work, received the recognition with grace. She didn't boast or seek attention. Instead, she used it as motivation to continue contributing meaningfully. She understood that recognition was a byproduct of her character and dedication, not the goal itself. Her focus remained on achieving results, supporting her team, and maintaining the standards she had set for herself. As the project reached completion, it was clear that her leadership had made a significant difference. Deadlines were met, objectives were achieved, and the team had grown stronger and more collaborative under her guidance. The CEO praised her publicly, acknowledging her contributions in front of the entire team. She felt a quiet pride, knowing that her efforts had not only resulted in professional success, but had also strengthened the cohesion and morale of the group. The arrogant man, on the other hand, watched from a distance as the woman he had tried to humiliate received praise and recognition. His attempts to undermine her had completely failed, and he was left to reflect on the consequences of his behavior. Colleagues who had once tolerated or even admired his arrogance now saw a stark contrast between his conduct and the woman's integrity and effectiveness. His reputation suffered quietly, while hers soared. For the woman, the journey had been transformative. What had started as an embarrassing incident in a cafe, a spilled coffee, and a moment of unwarranted criticism, had become a turning point in her career. Her response, characterized by calmness, dignity, and professionalism, had opened doors to new opportunities and allowed her to demonstrate her true capabilities. She had proven to herself and others that character and composure often matter more than appearances or quick judgments. As the days passed, she continued to thrive, taking on new responsibilities and further demonstrating her leadership abilities. The experience reinforced a valuable lesson. Challenges and negative encounters were opportunities in disguise. By responding with integrity, patience, and confidence, she had turned a potentially discouraging situation into a career-defining moment. The CEO, pleased with the outcome, made a point to mentor her personally, recognizing that her growth and success could inspire others within the organization. He valued not just her skills, but the way she handled herself in every situation, calmly, thoughtfully, and respectfully. Her approach set a standard for excellence that went beyond technical ability, highlighting the importance of character in professional success. Meanwhile, the arrogant man continued to grapple with the consequences of his behavior. He saw firsthand how arrogance and judgment could lead to isolation and diminished credibility, while dignity and professionalism could elevate someone to recognition and opportunity. Though he had once sought to dominate through criticism, he now had to acknowledge, at least privately, that true strength lay in composure, resilience, and respect for others. The woman, focused on her path, felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. She had navigated a challenging encounter with grace, earned the trust and respect of influential leaders, and achieved success on her own terms. She understood that life's tests often came in small, unexpected forms, and the way one responded could shape the course of their future. By the end of the project, her reputation was firmly established. Colleagues admired her for her professionalism, the CEO recognized her for her exceptional contributions, and her confidence had grown in ways she had not anticipated. She had transformed a moment of embarrassment into a story of resilience, leadership, and success, one that would continue to inspire her and others for years to come. The arrogant man, left to reflect on his actions, realized too late that true power and respect are earned through character, not through condescension or criticism. Meanwhile, the woman moved forward, not with vengeance or resentment, but with a sense of accomplishment, purpose, and quiet strength. She had turned a small moment of public humiliation into a life-changing opportunity, proving that dignity and composure are often the most powerful tools in any challenge. In the end, it wasn't just about the coffee spill or the rude comments. It was about H.